Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Today we are going to be starting chapter 3. If you remember, we ended off on Piper overly ecstatic, super excited about getting to go to the picnic. So now we're starting from there. Chapter 3. Will you be my friend, Piper? Sally Sue asked hopefully. And Piper smiled. It was the perfect end to a perfect picnic. They'd shared ice cream, and Sally Sue had told Piper her worst secret, that she'd snuck her mother's lip rouge and wore it to school. Lip rouge is lipstick. And Piper had told Sally Sue her biggest dream, to fly around the world. Sally Sue had shown Piper how to do a jig, and they danced under the trees and giggled until their stomachs hurt. When the fireworks came, they lay on the cool grass and watched them explode in the night sky, and that was when Sally Sue became Piper's friend. Later, they would become best friends, would be maids of honor at each other's weddings. They'd live next door to each other, and their children would play together, best friends for life. That's how it was going to be. At least, that's how Piper imagined it being. Over and over again in great detail until her imagined picnic fantasy seemed a concrete reality. And then at long last, there was finally no more need for the fantasy because in reality, Piper stood between Betty and Joe on the lawn of the First Baptist Church, where right before her eyes was every single soul currently alive in the entire county of Lowland, all 97 of them. It was nothing short of overwhelming to Piper to see such a throng of people amassed in one place. Picnic tables groaned with peach cobbler, cherry pie, fresh berries, mountains of corn on the cob, ham, and fried chicken, and the barbecue was going strong with ribs. Fourth of July banners and balloons decorated trees and tables alike. Kids bobbed for apples, men threw horseshoes. The new minister and his wife enjoyed the banjo and fiddle played by the straight harm boys, and women drank lemonade and fanned themselves under the trees. There wasn't a place that Piper could set her eyes where something or other wasn't happening. Mind what I says now. Keep my feet on the ground. I know, Piper absent-mindedly repeated, distracted by all the picnic sights. You've told me and told me, Ma. Just then, Piper spied 3 girls eating ice cream, and her heart skipped a beat. Already the picnic was everything she imagined it was going to be. For her own part, Betty was drenched in a nervous sweat, standing on the edge of the lawn on the verge of the picnic. Betty suddenly wasn't sure it was such a good idea, having spent Piper's entire life keeping her away from folks. Betty had learned to never leave anything to chance. On Sundays, she would see to it that they arrived moments before the church service began and would sit in the back pew with Piper firmly wedged between her and Joe. The moment the church service was over, Betty made sure that they were the first out the door. Birthday party invites extended to Piper were politely but firmly refused, and any other social events were simply out of the question as far as Betty was concerned. Even when visits to Doc Bell were needed, Betty insisted upon the first appointment of the day so that the waiting room was empty. It was no wonder that it took all of Betty's willpower not to hurry the child back to the farm when faced with the full throttle of peopled activity before her. Maybe she'd jumped the gun and rushed things. Maybe the child wasn't ready. Joe's lips were twitching nervously, as though he wanted to say something but couldn't quite figure out how to translate the thought into sound. When he saw Millie Mae Miller spy them across the way, and practically sprint at Piper, he almost bolted to intercept her. Joe couldn't abide Millie Mae and her gossipy, mean-spirited ways. Sure as anything, she'd be spreading rumors about Piper before you could say Jack Rabbit stew. Can I have some ice cream, Ma? Piper noticed a blonde girl with big brown eyes heading for the line of children waiting for ice cream. Watch your dress, cautioned Betty, who also saw Millie Mae's pointed attention and was relieved that Piper was escaping her scrutiny. Moments later, Millie Mae trotted up, clearly disappointed that Piper had already moved on. Weren't that your Piper? She looked after the child with an intense curiosity that bordered on mania. Millie Mae held the unofficial office of town gossip in Lowland County, and it was a position she took very seriously. Nothing went on in the county that she didn't know about and relate in vivid detail and at great length to anyone who might be the least bit interested, and even to those who weren't at all interested but were unlucky enough to be cornered by her and unable to get away without being rude. If Betty's greatest fears could be contained in 2 words, those 2 words would be Millie May. You keep that child all to yourself too much, Betty. It ain't good for her. It's high time she was out and about, Millie May sniffed. Didn't see fit to take her out before. Ain't no one worth her time meeting anyways, Betty spat reproachfully. Joe was careful to hide his smile as the full meaning of Betty's jab hit Millie May. That so? Millie May cut back. I heard tell it's 'cause she ain't like other young'uns. In truth, the only person who ever actually said that about Piper was Millie May herself. That's a fat lie if I ever heard one. Only a fool would say such a thing. That child's as normal as you or I. Just go ask Doc Bell. Betty was incensed. I reckon I'll make up my own mind on that account. Thank you kindly. With that, Millie May stalked away, her head full of steam. Millie May Miller hadn't risen to the post of town gossip for no good reason. And in her gossiping bones, she knew that there was something not quite right about Piper McLeod. May the good Lord help her. Today, she was going to get to the bottom of it. Piper got into the line for ice cream behind a girl just about her age. As Piper well knew, that girl's name was Sally Sue Miller. After long years of jealousy watching Sally Sue's daily journey to and from school from her perch in the hayloft, Piper was finally standing a foot away from her. As if by some miracle, Sally Sue, who was all but overcome by desire for a creamy cold treat on such a hot afternoon, breathlessly turned to Piper and exclaimed, My favorite ice cream, strawberry. What's yours? Strawberry? Piper was thrilled that they already had so much in common. Ever wonder why they call them strawberries? I mean, they don't look nothing like straw. They're red. Sally Sue had never had such a thought, but now that she did consider it, she had to admit it was a mighty strange. You're right about that. Maybe they should call them blush berries, or rosy berries, or red berries, or scrumptious berries. I ain't never renamed something before. Ever wonder what it'd be like to eat nothing but ice cream all the time? Piper had. I'd have lamb chop ice cream for dinner with a side of corn ice cream. Sally Sue giggled. I'd have bacon and egg ice cream for breakfast. Castor oil ice cream when you're sick, Piper imagined. And ice cream toothpaste before bed. Ice cream sandwiches at school. Sally Sue allowed room for Piper to stand next to her in line. My name's Sally Sue. What's yours? Everything was going exactly as she hoped it would. Piper beamed. I'm Piper. Piper McLeod. Suddenly, Sally Sue took a step back. Piper McLeod? I heard my mama talk about you. She says you ain't right in the head. Piper gasped, outraged. There ain't nothing wrong with my head. Sally Sue looked at Piper's head closely and indeed could see nothing wrong with it. She shrugged. My mama says there is, and she ain't never been wrong before. Sally Sue pointed to where Millie May stood, watching them, and Piper instantly recognized her. I can tell you, she's wrong now, Piper insisted. How dare she say such things about her? It was so darned unfair, it made her want to holler. Instead, she said, and your mama shouldn't go round kicking dogs. Sally Sue's mouth flew open, and she blushed deeply. My mama ain't never kicked no dog. Has too. Piper had seen it as plain as day when she'd flown over their house not more than a week ago. Has not? How would you know anyways? Sally Sue challenged, placing her hands on her hips. 'Cause I saw it with my own eyes, that's how. She was right back of your house, smoking a pipe, and the dog barked and she kicked its behind so hard it yapped. Piper triumphed. It was a short-lived victory because Sally Sue's eyes began to swim in tears of shame. You don't know us? How come you know these things? She whispered and took another step away. Before Piper could answer, Rory Ray, Sally Sue's oldest brother, came barreling down on them. Sally Sue, quit your crying or Ma'll pack us all up home. Rory Ray was quickly flanked by the 4 older brothers. As an only girl with 5 older brothers, Sally Sue's life was a torment, and the stress was showing. Even her mother had to admit she was a terrible crybaby. I ain't crying, she wailed. You is too. I'll whop you if you start your blubbering. It's her fault, Sally Sue nodded at Piper. Hey, ugly, did you make my sister cry? Roy Ray redirected his wrath at Piper. Uh, Piper didn't know how to answer. She hadn't imagined any scenarios like this when she visualized the picnic. Sally Sue sniffed loudly. Shut your pie hole, Sally Sue. Roy Ray barked at her. Ma's looking this way. The five brothers gathered around Sally Sue, whose face was red, her eyes bulging with unshed tears, and her lower lip quivering. She couldn't trust herself to speak, so she just pointed at Piper. Roy Ray shoved Piper to the ground, where she landed in a swirl of dust. Hand-me-down farm boots surrounded her at every turn. Leave my sister be, you freak. Hey, ain't you the kid who's got something wrong in the head? One of the brothers kicked dirt in Piper's face. Piper coughed, choking on the dirt. Stupid or no, you'll leave her be. You hear, freak? Come on, Roy Ray. I want to get me some ice cream, one of the brothers pleaded. Roy Ray grabbed Sally Sue and dragged her in front of all the boys in the line, leaving Piper on the ground. Piper sat in the dirt for a long moment, devastated. In the course of only a handful of minutes, she had found and then lost her best friend. It was a terrible and bitter blow, and while the dust swirled around her, Piper mourned the birthday parties, graduations, weddings, and shared birth announcements that were never to be. When the dirt settled, Piper looked up to find Millie Mae Miller's eyes fixed firmly upon her, a sneer twisting at her lips. Piper hated Millie Mae for laughing at her and telling stories that weren't true. How dare folks judge her when they didn't even know her at all? It wasn't right. Piper's keen sense of justice was tweaked, and she immediately resolved to show them exactly how wrong they all were. Getting to her feet, Piper quickly dusted herself off. Holding her head high, she jutted her chin out and marched right over to the group of kids playing with a ball. If folks thought there was something wrong with her head, then she was going to show them different. All they needed was a chance to get to know her better. By the end of the picnic, she was going to see to it that Millie Mae Miller ate every single one of those ugly words she went around saying. And if Millie Mae got a bellyache from their bitter taste, Piper wouldn't feel sorry for her neither. I'm going to pause there.